Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna show you a trick to delete multiple columns with one click. And this can be of help if you, let's say, export data from external systems. It sometimes contains 100, maybe more columns. And that's a lot of data to analyze. And let's say you are only interested to work with a bunch of columns and you want to quickly delete everything else. So here I have some absolutely dummy data and it contains, I think, 100 columns. So the idea will be to write a VBA macro that with one click, it would only leave these columns and delete everything else. And obviously this list should be dynamic, meaning we should add and delete to it, and the macro should still work fine. So let's launch the Visual Basic Editor, and I'm gonna start writing a subroutine, which I will call delete columns. And the first thing I would like to do is to declare a variable that will hold reference to the data worksheet. So I'll just call it data worksheet as worksheet. And since this is an object, we need the set statement, and this equals this workbook dot worksheets o_data. Then I would want to loop through all the cells in the first row, the header row. So to do this, obviously this should also be dynamic. I will want to first find the last column here. So for this, I'm gonna declare a variable which I'll call last call, and it's going to be of data type integer. And here I will write that last call equals data worksheet dot cells on the first row, and the column index will be columns.count. And then from it, we can use the end property and move to the left. So here xl to left dot column. And I explained this a lot more detailedly in another video that I'm going to share in the description. So if I now write debug.print last call, then here we should see 100 if what I have written is correct, of course. And it says 100. And as mentioned, in this worksheet, we have exactly 100 columns. So if I add another variable here that I will use in the counter, and I can write a loop, and it's very important, then the loop will be in reverse order. Meaning what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start from the last column, moving to the first one, and if these cells do not exist in this list, then obviously we'll delete the entire column. So here I'm going to write that for I equals last call to 1, step -1, next I. And just for the test, if I write here debug.print, and we can print the column number, and we can concatenate this with each header name. So here I can write data worksheet dot cells on row 1 and column I dot value. So if I click run, then we'll see all column names with their numbers to be populated here in the immediate window. So if I maximize this window, we will see that the last column is agent name and the first one is customer ID, exactly as it is on the worksheet. So now obviously we need to write some kind of an if statement here. And if in your use case you only have a bunch of columns to compare against, then you can simply write something like this. on row I and that column I, that value, if this is if this is not equal to, let's say, customer ID, and then you can write or and just change it a little bit, just change the values here, then this should work. But as mentioned, I want this to be a dynamic list. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use a VLOOKUP function here. And it is absolutely fine if I write everything in this subroutine, but it's going to get long and ugly. And therefore, I would write a function here, which I will call getLookUpRange, and the function itself will return a range object. Now I'm going to declare this needed data as a worksheet and then set it so this is needed underscore data, and I will also need to find the last row here, because as mentioned it must be a dynamic list. So the last row, okay, I forgot the dim word here, dim last row as long, and then last row equals needed worksheet dot cells, and this time we're going to use rows.count, comma 1 dot end excel up dot row. And as mentioned, I explained this in a different video that I'll make sure to link in the description. So now I'll add yet another variable here, lookup range as range, and the lookup range, obviously we need the set statement, set lookup range, and this will be equal to needed worksheet dot range, where the first cell will be on row 1 and column 1, is this obviously cell A1, and the last cell in that range will be whatever the last row is. I need dot cells here, last row, comma 1. And this should, obviously the function should return this range. So if I write here, set get lookup range to be equal to lookup range. And maybe I didn't have to use this variable name, but anyway. And now we can test if what I have written is correct. So here I will use the same variable name, dim lookup range as range. And then here I can write set lookup range to be equal to whatever this function will return. And it's time to test it, so I can simply write lookup range dot select. And since I have activated this worksheet, then this shouldn't return any error. So let's try. Now click run, and we can see that this range has been selected properly. And if I add, let's say, more values to it, then they should be highlighted now when I click run. So this is indeed a dynamic list. And now the idea will be that we can write the VLOOKUP function inside this for loop. And for this, I will add another variable, simply because I think it will be easier to understand. So I'm gonna write a variable current call of type string. And then here inside the loop, the current column will be data worksheet dot cells on row 1 and column I dot value. And I think I will need another variable, which will probably be the last one, hopefully. And here I can write that v equals application dot VLOOKUP, and we're going to be looking for the current column. We're going to be looking in the lookup range, and we need the first column as a result and exact match, which is 0, right? So now I can write if not is error v then end if. And if I now write debug print or do the same technique that I did when I started writing the loop, meaning to print only those columns that exist in this list. So now I can write debug.print, and again I can print the column number and concatenate this with current col. So if I click run now, then we can see that the purchase order ID is the 59th column, and I can verify that this is correct. So it's column BG, and if I now click Ctrl Shift left, and we can see here in the status bar that the count is indeed 59. So this is correct. So the idea will be that if the VLOOKUP function returns an error, then this means that the column does not exist in this list, and in such case we'll delete the entire column. So back to the Visual Basic Editor, and I'm gonna delete this not, and now all I need to do is write data worksheet dot columns in parentheses I dot entire column dot delete, and this should be it. So I have 9 columns here, and if I now click run, then if everything what I have written is correct, then instead of having 100 columns, we should only be left with 9. So let's see if this works. So I'm gonna click run, and we can see that now we're only left with these 9 columns. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and I'll see you in the next one.